sophisticated criminals to the tune of $100 billion a year. Lack of state oversight spurs Medicaid fraud, says Spectrum New York. Scammers ripped off New York's controversial Medicaid home care program to the tune of $68 million. New York Post. New York Times says staggering rise in catheter bills suggest Medicare scam. Florida man indicted for Medicare wire fraud in a $97 million scheme. Medicaid program suspended from 2 South Jersey nursing homes after being accused of taking $83 million from nursing homes funded by New York Medicare and Medicaid. Fiscal year 2023 proved to be a high-value one for healthcare frauds and settlements, with the DOJ totaling $2 billion in illicit activity. California Attorney General Bonta announces indictment of Southern California healthcare provider for Medicaid fraud of nearly $60 million. CEO of digital health company arrested for $100 million Adderall distribution and healthcare fraud scheme. New York doctor convicted of $24 million Medicaid fraud scheme. Attorney General Tish James announces convictions and sentences of 5 taxi company owners in Orange and Rensselaer counties for stealing millions in Medicaid. Florida telemarketer sentenced to 15 years in prison for $67 million in Medicare fraud scheme. Hill County doctor in San Antonio sentenced 10 years in prison for $26 million in restitution for Medicaid fraud scheme. I can go on and on reading headline after headline about the rampant fraud and abuse in this program that is actually taking away. That's what's hurting our vulnerable Americans who rely on this program, the fraudsters who are stealing the money. Now, my governor, Kathy Hochul, lied to New Yorkers and about what Republicans are really trying to do. Our real goal is to root out this Wade fraud and abuse to protect benefits for our eligible recipients. And Kathy Hochul said it herself. In her own words, she pointed out how fraudulent the program is. In July 2024, the governor said, the state's Medicaid consumer-directed personal assistance program has, quote, become a racket, unquote, and said it is, quote, one of the most abused programs in the history of New York, unquote. And she said that the current trajectory of Medicaid spending is, quote, not sustainable, unquote. Other Democrats have pointed out the same things. Attorney General Garland, that was President Biden's Attorney General, in a 2024 speech regarding health care fraud, he announced charges against 193 defendants for over $2.75 billion in false Medicare and Medicaid claims, and that was just one event. New York Attorney General Tish James, in a January 2025 speech, she said, quote, companies that illegally profit by exploiting Medicaid patients steal taxpayer money and undermine the healthcare system that all New Yorkers rely on. So to my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, let's work together to actually fix this. Let's work together to go after those fraudsters, to eliminate this abuse that we're seeing in this system, so we can preserve this very important program that our seniors, our disabled, our children with developmental disabilities, and vulnerable Americans rely on. Let's not play partisan politics with something that is so critically important to so many New Yorkers and Americans across the country. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Nevada, Ms. Lee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to congratulate who I believe will be the next winner of American Idol, Sierra Vista High School's own and Nevada's 3rd District constituent, Isaiah Mazzalagalu. Over the weekend, I watched Isaiah get his golden ticket to Hollywood after singing A Song for You with his uncle playing the guitar by his side. With a voice like his, it's no wonder they're calling him Samoan Silk. And not only is Isaiah a powerful and talented singer, but he also shines on the football field, the volleyball court, and leading his school's Polynesian club. So no matter what you do, Isaiah, know that the entire Southern Nevada community is behind you chasing your dreams. I wish you the best of luck on American Idol journey. Thank you, and I yield.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, as we take on the continuing resolution, which once again isn't the best way of doing business around here, we should be grinding through the 12 different points that the appropriations process would have. But at least there's good news as CRs go, in that part of it that's being plussed up includes the issue with our military. And a lot of times when CRs occur, our military is the one that gets shorted on that. They have to plan long-term for weapon systems, what they need to upgrade facilities, and take care of the personnel in the process. But this does boost up our military needs to an extent in the CR. So it will upgrade in all 4 branches, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines that are on the front lines. It'll strengthen their readiness and help modernize some of their infrastructure. So delays, of course, put these projects at risk. That's why it's important that the CR be done timely. As I mentioned, family housing, a very important aspect for the comfort and efficiency for our personnel. Direct improvements in the living conditions for the service members and their families. Stable funding, make sure these projects stay on track. Now, the Arlington National Cemetery, of course, it has amazing meaning to our whole country, especially but those that are fallen that would be interred there. And so improvements there for a little better process for people to be able to get in and out of the facility, as well as the ceremonies that might be held there. Veterans health care. We have a significant improvement in their medical services, community care, and facility improvements to ensure veterans can get good health care that they need and deserve. Uncertainty does not help that to remain. That's why passing the CR at this time is important. For retirement homes for veterans, it ensures that they'll have the facilities continue to stay on track for whether new ones are to be built or the continued upgrades and maintenance that is not passed over. One of the aspects that we're disappointed that did not get into the continuing resolution, and this has bipartisan support. I'm pleased to work with my colleague, Mr. Neguse from Colorado, on what's known as secure rural schools. And that is a fund that we do every single year. It's nothing new. It's nothing that's going to plus up spending around here or require additional budget effort. It's something that is basically there to supplement the income for local level, for counties. It's called SRS, Secure Rural Schools. A large part goes to help local schools and as well as county roads. This funding used to come from the timber industry, which is overlaps so many of these areas that the SRS fund would go to. So with the decimation of the timber industry starting really in the late 70s, the 80s with the spotted owl movement and other environmental concerns that have made it so just near impossible in some cases to do the timber harvest that is really needed to be done, this program came along and replaced those receipts, which it's fairly tough every year to come here, and our county supervisors come here hat in hand every year, ask us to support the SRS one more time. These are dollars that have to come from the U.S. Treasury rather than from the forest, from the industry. So until such point as we can get really a much more viable timber industry going again in this country with a much more streamlined process of permitting, especially on federal Forest Service land. Why should it be so difficult to do things that make good sense as far as thinning our forest, harvesting from it? It's a renewable resource. You plant it back and the trees grow again. And what we do instead is we seem to ignore that fact and just let them burn. year after year after year, especially in the western states. My own district had a 1 million acre fire, 3 years ago, 400,000 acre fire last year, 600,000 acre fire a couple years before that, time after time after time. And all my colleagues in the western states pretty much can point to that same thing happening in their states as well. Millions of acres burn every year in the West. And for some reason, the U.S. is now the #1 importer of wood and paper products. #1 importer of lumber. What are we doing here? So we have to come hat in hand each year and ask for funding from the Treasury to replace an industry that we need to produce wood and paper products that we use regularly in our daily lives. Heaven knows this place goes through a lot of paper. Why should we have that come from foreign forest somewhere? You know, when I'm at the railroad crossing waiting on a train and back at home and I see all these loads of lumber and Canadian wheat coming south, why aren't we doing that at home? So
The gentleman's
we need
time
to get
has
SRS
expired.
in the next round. So thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Kelly, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in defiance of the House Republicans' partisan funding bill. Democrats pulled up a seat for Republican leadership at the negotiating table to discuss a bipartisan solution, but Republicans walked away. What did Republicans propose instead? A blank check to Donald Trump and Elon Musk to take money away from you and spend as they will. For years, I've heard my Republican colleagues talk about the power of the purse and how that power belongs to Congress and Congress alone. Republicans love to talk about Article 1 of the Constitution and insisted on clear checks and balances. What do I hear now? Silence. Now that Republicans are in control of Congress, they decide to bend the knee to Donald Trump. Republicans are giving Donald Trump and Elon Musk the power to decide who gets money and who doesn't. Based on these last 8 weeks, we know who Trump prioritizes: his billionaire friends and big corporations. He does not care for veterans, workers with disabilities, children, senior citizens, farmers, or families just trying to make ends meet. Republicans will try to call this a clean, continuing resolution. Believe me, that is a bunch of fill in the blank, because this is far from clean. The Republican funding bill has dirt all over it. With this bill, the Trump administration will decide construction funding by the Army Corps of Engineers. Trump will cut funds for lead pipe replacements for schools, better water mains to prevent flooding, and better streets for our communities. Elon Musk and Doge have proven how little they care for our veterans. They made sweeping staffing cuts to veteran centers across the country, including in Danville, Illinois. My office has gotten calls from workers and some vets who were fired for no justifiable reason, impacting their own families and the veterans they care for. The Republican funding bill goes even further, cutting $23 billion in veterans' benefits. It gives Trump permission to eliminate programs for veterans, including homelessness prevention programs, which could lead to more than 32,000 veterans losing their homes. These are people who defended our country. Trump would also have the power to reallocate funding dedicated to maternal and child health programs, including Healthy Start, rural maternal health initiatives, and maternity care training. For over a decade, I have rolled up my sleeves to save mothers who are dying from preventative pregnancy-related causes. In the middle of a maternal mortality crisis, Trump would sign away all the programs that help mothers and babies. Trump likes to talk a big game about border control and our country's fentanyl crisis. He plays as the world's biggest bully and hits our closest allies with tariffs. Meanwhile, Republicans give Trump the power to steer funding dedicated to stopping the flow of fentanyl and instead spend that money on mass deportation initiatives. Last September, Kankakee County and my district received funding to help law enforcement crack down on illicit drug trafficking and address the overdose epidemic. That funding would stop under the Republican bill. You heard at the joint address to Congress last week that RFK Jr. is free to run with his conspiracy theories and anti-vaccination lies. This bill would give him broad discretion to spend money as he wishes at the CDC, ignoring critical life-saving programs like ending the HIV epidemic initiative, Alzheimer's disease programs, and cancer prevention. If you are not part of the 1%, House Republicans and Donald Trump simply do not care about you. It does not matter if you are Democrat, Republican, or Independent. This partisan funding bill proves it. Republicans are giving Donald Trump the green light to do as he wishes, and we all know that he does not have the American people in mind. I, alongside House Democrats, have always been at the negotiation table, but we will never negotiate away veterans' benefits, health care, or people's Social Security. I refuse to betray my constituents. Please stand up, speak out, and make your voices heard. Thank you. I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Klein, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the 40th anniversary of Access Independence, a dedicated organization serving people with disabilities in Virginia's northern Shenandoah Valley. For 4 decades, Access Independence has been a beacon of hope and empowerment, promoting independent living through essential services and resources. Founded in 1985 as one of 17 centers for independent living in Virginia, Access Independence has continuously expanded its impact, offering independent living skills training, peer mentoring, information and referral, and advocacy services to the counties of Clark, Frederick, Page, Shenandoah, Warren, and the city of Winchester. Led by Middletown Mayor Charles Harbaugh and guided by core values of empowerment, integrity, respect, and equal rights, Access Independent's dedicated team has touched thousands of lives. Last year alone, it served 678 clients and generously provided over 200 pieces of medical equipment to those in need. Please join me in congratulating Access Independence on this significant milestone and wishing them continued success in the years ahead. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Chairfullis McCormick, for 5 minutes.
Over the last few weeks, Americans have actively watched the dismantling of Social Security and direct attacks on our seniors, our families, and also our veterans. I've heard directly from my constituents, and they are scared. They're worried about their next meal. They're worried about if they'll be able to see their doctor. They're worried if they'll be able to retire with dignity. They're worried about the skyrocketing cost of living and the price of groceries. It's because they've heard so much about the cuts to Medicaid, the cuts to SNAP, and the cuts to the VA, all being proposed by the House Republicans. Let's take a closer look at what the House Republicans are proposing. House Republicans are proposing Medicaid cuts of $880 billion, SNAP cuts of $230 billion, Social Security cuts of $1.5 trillion, Medicare raised the premiums by 22%, and veterans being fired, 83,000 veteran employees being fired. Now let's take a closer look at what they actually promised the American people. House Republicans have promised the American people to actually put forth bills that will make their life better. Let's take it to the board. Nothing, nada. Nothing has been proposed to help them with their financial situation. To make a visual of it, nothing has been proposed for the American people. I dare my House Republicans to join House Democrats in putting forth bills that will actually help the American people. The American people do not want $880 billion cut from their health care. The American people do not want $230 billion cut from SNAP and other assistance programs. They want to actually live the American dream, and they want opportunities. But right now, House Republicans have offered nothing, a blank piece of paper. Why, you may ask? Because Elon Musk says the only way to save America is by jeopardizing our most vulnerable, is by eliminating entitlement programs. In fact, he said that the biggest issue that he has and what he must do is eliminate these programs. What types of programs are we talking about? Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans benefits. For American people, this is ridiculous. These are our most vulnerable populations. We have promised our warriors, our heroes, that we would be there for them, that we would provide for them their benefits. What are we doing? I dare House Republicans to join the Democrats and stand up for the American people, to stand with us as we fight for the American people. I dare House Republicans to stand up for Social Security, to stand up for Medicaid, to stand up for our heroes. The time is now. Let's stop the madness and make sure that all Americans have a real opportunity with living with dignity and pursuing the American dream. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Siscomani, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate the Push Ridge Christian Academy men's basketball team for winning their first championship in the history of the program. The 11th ranked Lions beat the 5th ranked Palo Verde Titans with a score of 69-46, an incredible performance by all players. From being 4 games under 500 just 6 weeks ago to clinching their goal as champions. This victory is an incredible underdog story. This championship caps off a monumental achievement for second-year coach Steve Solita, who has transformed the Lions into a winning program during his short tenure. To the players, coaches, family members, and anyone who played a part in this special season, congratulations on this historic achievement. You have made your school and our community extremely proud. Know that we all look forward to rooting for you next season again. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the incredible contributions of Wolfgang Weber and has given to the soccer community in Southern Arizona. Born in Germany in 1944, Wolfgang distinguished himself as a talented soccer player before immigrating to the United States in 1973. In 1977, he was the co-founder and head coach of Tucson Unified Soccer Club and the Tucson Soccer Academy. During this time, his team made it to 8 finals and won 3 state championships. In 1982, he became head coach of South Point Catholic High School's men's soccer program and has amassed an outstanding record of 888 games, 793 wins, went to the state finals 12 times, becoming state champions 10 times. He is the longest tenured head coach in Tucson's history, coaching 43 seasons. In fact, Coach Weber just led the South Point's men's soccer team to a championship this year, their 5th title in a row. For his passion, devotion to all student athletes he has coached, his genuine love for the game of soccer, Wolfgang was rightfully inducted into Pima County Sports Hall of Fame in 2005 and the Arizona School Athletic Coaches Hall of Fame. Wolfgang Weber is known as the father of soccer in Southern Arizona, and rightfully so. Wolfgang's legacy reminds us of the incredible impact one person can have in our community. Through his passion for soccer, he has enriched Southern Arizona in ways that will be felt for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor Mark Schmidt on his retirement as the Director of Small Business Development Center at Cochise College and thank him for his outstanding leadership and support for small businesses, the backbone of our local economy. As a former business owner himself, Mark leveraged his deep knowledge of the trials and triumphs of running a small business to help others. Through his 17 years as the SBDC, he was more than willing to help out those chasing their own American dream. The center not only helps prospective owners launch their businesses, it also provides a variety of cost-free classes and services, such as forming a business plan, designing a website, and much, much more. Throughout his time as director, Mark was instrumental in hosting workshops, pursuing grants, and advocating for small business economy and how they can thrive. Mark, your unwavering commitment to this purpose has truly made a long-lasting impact. I know we're all thankful for your leadership and service to Southern Arizona. Your legacy and the invaluable contributions you have made will continue to positively influence your community and the lives of countless people. Once again, thank you for your service. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to congratulate Jefferson County School Superintendent Dr. Walter Gonsolin, who was just named the 2025 National Superintendent of the Year. Superintendent Gonsolin was celebrated at the AASA's National Conference on Education for his leadership within Alabama's Jefferson County school system. He helped to create over 20 signature academies in the school district that expose students to potential careers, all while increasing the district's college readiness rates and dual enrollment participation. He is the first Alabama educator to win this national title. As a daughter of 2 educators, I am forever grateful to Superintendent Gonsolin's efforts and all of the teachers, administrators, and parents who share his mission to provide the best education possible to our next generation of leaders. On behalf of Alabama's 7th Congressional District, I ask my colleagues to join me in congratulating Superintendent Walter Gonsolin. We are all so proud of you, and we are grateful for the work that you do each and every day to create opportunities for our students to thrive. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Figures, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, today I rise with a deep sense of responsibility to highlight an issue that it's disappointing that we have to highlight. We just spent a weekend, myself and colleagues on both sides of the aisle, from both the Senate and the House, and people from around the country and around the world spent the weekend down in Selma, Alabama, and Montgomery, Alabama, commemorating the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, which recognizes the importance of voting rights. And we reflected on the lives of the people who marched across that bridge 60 years ago for me to be able to stand here today, and for people who look like me to be able to have a fair opportunity to participate in our electoral process. They were led on that day by a former colleague of many members here, Congressman John Lewis. But before Mr. Lewis was nearly killed in Selma, Alabama in 1965, he was nearly killed a few years earlier in Montgomery, Alabama. He was a freedom rider, and he was on the bus of freedom riders himself with other young college students at the time, both black and white, as they came from Birmingham into Montgomery, Alabama. They were abandoned by the State Highway Patrol escort that they had on that day, and when they got to the Montgomery Greyhound bus station, there were hundreds of Klansmen and Klan supporters awaiting them, and they unleashed a brutal and savage attack on them, nearly killing them, including a U.S. Department of Justice official who had been sent to monitor the freedom rides. Well, the reason I stand here today is because several years ago, we had the wisdom to designate that Montgomery Greyhound bus station as a National Historic Landmark. And it was added to the Registry of National Historic Places here in the United States, and the National Freedom Rides Museum is now housed in that building. Well, last week, just before we went down to Alabama, DOGE, in its infinite wisdom, decided to list that building for sale. And that strikes a chord with people in the state of Alabama, both Democrats and Republicans. That strikes a chord with me as someone who sits here today that is the product of the Voting Rights Act. We think we'll win on this one. We hope that they will see the logic in preserving American history. After all, just a few years ago, we saw people literally lose their minds over efforts to remove the monuments that have been placed around this country in recognition of those who fought to keep people who look like me enslaved. I think we will win this one, but we shouldn't have to keep doing this. We shouldn't have to stand up for pieces of history in this country. We shouldn't have to stand up for pieces of history related to our civil rights, related to voting rights. We shouldn't have to deal with an administration where it seems every single week we're having to stand up again, whether it's talking about the Tuskegee Airmen and their rightful place in history, whether it's repealing a equal opportunity executive order that's been in place since the 1960s, whether it's seeing this administration hit pause on federal scholarship funding to land-grant institutions for historically black colleges, but not hitting pause on the same funding for land-grant schools that were not historically black colleges. It is a shame. We should not be doing this. We have to do better. We cannot keep running the clock back in an effort to appease this administration's efforts to whitewash history. So, Mr. Speaker, today I rise in honor of John Lewis, in honor of the civil rights workers, both known and unknown. We will stand with you, we will fight for you, because we will not sell our history. We will not go down silently, we will not go down quietly, and we certainly will not go backwards. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Bell, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise as this week on March 14th in my hometown of St. Louis, we are celebrating 314 Day. But this day is much more than just our area code or an excuse to celebrate our hometown sports teams, the Cardinals, Blues, St. Louis City Soccer Club, the Battle Hawks. I'm also going to acknowledge Matthews Dickies and a huge shout out to the St. Louis Stars, our Negro League baseball team back in the day. St. Louis's own James Cool Papa Bell, Hall of Famer as well. God rest his soul. It's not just about what high